Oh my God, of course there is a jackhammer starting outside of my window right now. I'll have freaking made it. And she magically suggested me. Sophie landed a campaign. We all need to help them now. So everybody was like, okay, Sophie, here's how we whoop this thing. And then they all sort of collectively coached me through it. See, my name on the little stickers is such a satisfaction. I can't describe it to you guys. Obviously, they would start right now. But I hope you guys can still enjoy the story. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rich Artist Fridays, end of the week. I hope you guys are all doing amazing and that you had a really nice week. And depending on where you are in the world, you know, having a nice morning or a nice afternoon or a nice evening. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for everybody that's in here live. Hi to everybody in the Instagram live. I hope you guys are having a happy day, an inspired day, a motivated day. But even if you're not, that's fine. You know, happens every once in a while. Oh my God, of course there is a jackhammer starting outside of my window right now. Can you guys hear that? Well, I guess we'll just have to keep going. Yeah, or maybe you have some unforeseen things come your way right now, like I am, but that's all right. I'm glad you guys are spending time with me. I'm Sophie. For anybody that doesn't know me, I founded the Rich Artist Program because I was craving community as a freelance photographer, and I was also wanting to no longer gatekeep all of the things that I got to learn in the path of becoming a freelance artist and working as a freelance photographer and making money off of my art and my passion. And I want you guys to be able to do that as well, but also, you know, have a healthy balance between feeling empowered and running your business, knowing how to do outreach, knowing how to get noticed by the clients that you want, feeling empowered in sort of making the career that you dream of happen for yourself. And then, you know, in return, having the mental capacity to be creative and be spontaneous and preserve your creative energy, because that's so important. And I watch a lot of artists burn themselves out because they don't have a business that actually supports them in their art. You know, you're not making enough money, you're not attracting the jobs at like the level of payment that you should be making and that you deserve to be making and that you need in order to create the best art that you can create. And I know you can, because if I handed you $20,000 tomorrow, you would absolutely rise to the occasion and create something pretty amazing. So that's what the Rich Artist Program is here for. The 30 minutes on Fridays are just sort of quick inputs, quick inspiration, quick motivation, and also just a little bit of entertainment at this point. You know, I have so many crazy stories from the times that I first got my foot in the door with the industry, all the way to starting to freelance and shooting my first ever big campaign, which I'm going to tell you that story today. And yeah, there was just so many bizarre, unique, adventurous moments along the way. Also, you know, some hard learning lessons, some hurdles placed in my way that I needed to sort of find a way to circumnavigate. And I'm sure, as we all know, being a freelance artist is probably one of the toughest career paths that you can choose, but I'm here to help you guys at least make it maybe a tiny little bit easier and maybe prevent you guys from making some of the mistakes I made, learn from my mistakes, and then do it even better than I did, maybe. So today we're sort of picking back up from like all the stuff that we talked about over the last couple of weeks, which I thought you guys really appreciated, which was these kind of story times from like interning and assisting and shadowing equipment managers, or being a studio manager, sort of like navigating the behind the scenes of a multi-million-dollar photography business and how all of the administrative sides get done. And today it's more, you know, last week we talked about the jump from being maybe an assistant or being in a full-time, completely different employee situation, different career, to making that jump to being a freelance artist. And I thought we'd pick right back up where we sort of left off with after I made that jump, and I started working full-time as a freelance photographer. Not shortly after that, I shot my first ever big beauty campaign. It was a hair campaign, and thank God I did, because I think it was like the month before everything got shut down for COVID. So this was in 2020, and that was literally one of the wildest rides up until that point in my career, like the wildest experience I ever had. just because because I'd never done it before, and also because I didn't know yet how to do the thing. Like I didn't have an agent, I didn't have like a whole studio of employees or assistants that were like, oh, here's how you do this, here's how you write an equipment list, like here's how you negotiate a contract and the usage rights for something like this. Like this was a nationwide campaign by a brand that is like one of the biggest hair care brands that you could like think of. One of the biggest hair care brands, it was one of those. And yeah, when that landed in my lap, I felt like, okay, I feel like this is the moment that I'd been working towards the whole time, and like pushing and doing shoot after shoot after shoot while I was still assisting, and like just trying to fill up my portfolio with as much stuff as I possibly could, and taking on different job positions in the industry and trying to learn as much as I possibly could, and also make myself as visible as I possibly could, like on social media and with my work, and trying to find a good strategy to really be like nestled in so that people knew I existed, like visibility as a freelance artist is so, so, so important. And we've talked about it so many times before. We'll probably keep talking about it for forever, because if people don't know you exist, then how the hell are they going to hire you? And so the way that job landed in my lap was the brand that I ended up shooting for had shot the original campaign for a product line that was like, something to like deposit color into your hair. And the original campaign was already shot, and it was shot by a very well-known photographer that like I knew his work, I knew which agency he was signed to, I knew which assistants he hired, like that type of guy. But he had been in the industry for maybe like 30 years. Like this guy is very well versed in doing sort of work like this. But what I heard like through the grapevine was also that he was very particular in the way that he liked to do his work, and I'm sure he wasn't cheap, which like good for him, because when you have that much experience, you can charge prices that are like up there, and the client for some reason decided that they didn't want to hire him for the sort of the extension of the campaign. So they were bringing out more colors in this product line, so they needed more images shot in exactly the same style as the original campaign was. And typically you just go back to the same photographer and be like, let's do more of what we already did. But they decided that they, for this reshoot, wanted to hire somebody new. And the retoucher that I had been working with for a while, and I knew her through the internship that I originally did. Like I remember I met her and I saw her work, and I've never met a retoucher like her before, where I thought like, if she ever retouched one of my images, I'll have freaking made it. Like I'll be so insanely happy. I could not wait to see what she would be able to do with my images. But that felt so, so far away, And she was doing the retouching on that original campaign. So the client went to her and asked her for a recommendation. And she magically suggested me. I mean, like, we're friends and she believes in me. And we've had so many, win-win situations where I've hired her, she's hired me since then, but this was like the first time where she was like, I know you're good enough for this, and I know that you can execute what the client wants. So she suggested me, and they actually ended up hiring me, which was like, it was just so unbelievable. It was so unbelievable. Let me just see what you guys are saying in the Instagram live. It was just so insane. Like I remember, I don't even remember how it went down, like those phone calls. I must have talked to somebody on the creative team from that brand. I remember very vividly, like when it came to like contract negotiations, because they were like, how much would you charge for this? And then I had to like write them an estimate and stuff. And I called the studio manager from the guy that I had previously interned with, because she was the one that was sort of managing a lot of his administrative stuff. And she was like dealing with budgets and estimates all day, every day. So she knew exactly within the scope of the industry and within the scope of the project, like how much I should be charging. Because I was like, do I charge $15,000? Do I charge $30,000? Are they expecting me to say something more in like the 50,000 mark? Because I literally, that's how little idea I had of like what to do, And so I needed somebody to be like, this is where you should be hitting. also based on like how many images they wanted and just like the whole thing. And then, you know, it came to contract negotiation and also the usage rights of the images, which is very like detailed of like where the images are going to be shown. And this was a nationwide campaign, so these images were going to be used all over the country. And based on that scope, your prices can vary so much. And also, you at that point, you want to be smart about the deal that you make, because let's say you make a deal with them for a year, they can use your images for a year. The next year, if they're still using your images, they're going to come back around and pay you the price that you originally charged for usage plus 25%, I think, is industry standard. So you cash in more money without doing any more work the next year. But if you made a bad deal in the first place, then you're sort of shooting yourself in the leg. But how the hell was I supposed to know like what that even meant? So I threw her like a couple of $100s, I believe, in order for her to like help me and sort of be my guiding voice. Like, I spend so much time with this woman on the phone, and she had a full-time job, and she would take like an hour, 2 hours at like 8 p.m. after her workday concluded to like be on the phone with me and coach me through this. Which like, she's an absolute angel for that. And I think I bought her like the biggest bouquet of flowers afterwards. But it was so moving to see all of the people that had originally like trained me, that I had like worked under. Like, I brought these people coffee for 6 months as an intern every single day. And now all of a sudden they were like, Sophie landed a campaign. We all need to help them now because everybody benefits. Like, these were the people that I was going to hire to do this job with me. So everybody was like, okay, Sophie, here's how we whoop this thing. And then they all sort of collectively coached me through it while I was like trying not to freak out or like mess up this opportunity for myself. It was so thrilling and so scary and so exciting at the same time. And I remember like I had been struggling financially the weeks leading up to that, and I was on the phone with my best friend in Berlin, and I was saying to her, like, I know that I can turn this around. I know that the next thing is around the corner. And she was like, yeah, just say to yourself, you know, within the next month I will make, I think she said like $1,500, something, because that's like how much I needed in order to like have my bases covered or something, or sort of dig myself out of the hole that I was perceiving to be in financially. And I was like, you know what, let's double that. Let's make it 3,000. And then within that month, it was like tenfold, 20-fold of that. You know, I don't quite remember how much I ended up making off of that campaign, but like within a couple of days of me having that phone call, or maybe even like this next day, this job landed in my lap. So that was a little bit like, what just happened? And it was just so wild, because I was like, me, like, are you sure? And at the same time, like trying to just be like, yes, I deserve this. I know I can do a good job. And we did a fantastic job, you guys. Like, we shot this campaign, and because I knew the retoucher that did the original retouching, she was able to give me the raw files from the original campaign, which like not often do you get access to those. If another photographer has shot those, you'll usually just see the end product and then have to recreate what they did by sort of guessing what they did. But it's so much easier to sort of figure out the original lighting and like the original gear being used if you can look at the raw files, because from the raw files to like the finished product, that can be a big difference. And when we shot the sort of the runner, like the follow-up to this campaign, my retoucher said that our lighting and the precision of light actually got her closer to what she ended up retouching the end product to look like than the original campaign. So she actually like shifted the light a little bit from the original campaign in order to make it like perfectly flattering. And we actually created a light that like got her closer to that, like within the raws, versus like her doing it all in post. So that had me really proud of myself, and the crew was amazing, you know, and the guys that I ended up hiring, who were the guys that I had previously worked under and been trained by, having those people on set and getting to sort of repay the favor. Like, these people had been paying my meal ticket and like throwing me jobs and recommendations for the last like 2 years, and then all of a sudden I was paying their paychecks, was just so mind-boggling. And we ended up, so with this campaign, sometimes you have a producer who will do like all of the booking the studio, booking the catering and stuff like that. But this was a campaign that was slightly smaller in scale than that. So I ended up taking on a lot of the pre-production, which obviously I charged them a pre-production fee, but it was so fun because I was the one booking the studio. I was the one, you know, putting the down payment down. And like, that was crazy too, to figure out like the insurance, because like I had a crew to insure, and like the studio is like $8,000 a day. Like my credit card limit isn't even that high. So that was like, holy crap, like how the hell do I even figure this out? I don't even have the infrastructure in place to run a production like that, but I figured it out. And then I got to choose the catering team, which like I had spent 2 years of my life previously just living off of catering food on set as an assistant every day. So I knew exactly which catering company. Everybody was always the most excited when you would show up on set in the morning and be like, oh, they're catering, hell yeah, it's going to be a good day. They were this like small family owned Brooklyn based catering company, and I was like, oh, I know exactly who I'm going to give this budget to, you know. And then the day of arriving and like seeing my name printed on all of the little stickers that are put on the catering boxes and on all of the equipment that was lined up by the studio, it was just so, it was such a 360 moment, and it was such a magical moment. Like that honestly still gets to me whenever I run a production, to like see my name on the little stickers is such a like satisfaction. I can't describe it to you guys, because I have been on like probably at this point hundreds of other people's productions, you know, and all of a sudden it was my turn to be the one that like, this was my production, this was my shoot, and it was so rewarding. And I remember I arrived, we shot it at Milk Studios. I think I'm allowed to say that. We shot it at Milk Studios, which is a very big, popular photo studio chain. They recently closed down like during the pandemic, and now they're just on the West Coast. But you guys know like Milk Makeup, they had a studio chain here in New York City, which like some of the biggest, most high-end fashion and beauty productions would be shot at Milk here in New York City. And I had been at Milk Studios like tens and tens of times as a nobody, like as a third assistant, just like lugging equipment back and forth all day long. And I knew those spaces like the back of my hand. And then I arrived that morning with my first assistant, and we like walked up to the front desk and we were like, oh, we're here to check into Studio 10. And the girl at the reception was like, oh, I'm sorry, like I can't let you guys in yet because the photographer hasn't opened the studio yet, because the photographer has to like sign in and then the clock starts running. Because like if it's like $8,000 a day, if you go into overtime, that's going to cost you quite a bit. Sorry, guys. If you're in Instagram Live and you can hear the jackhammer, like I'm so sorry. Like obviously they would start right now. But I hope you guys can still enjoy the story. And she was like, oh, I can't let you guys in yet because you're not signed, like the photographer hasn't signed in yet, like they're not here yet. And my assistant goes, they are the photographer. And she goes, oh my God, it's so nice to meet you. You know, like it's so good to put a face to the, like we love your work, but it's so good to put a face to the name, because they like look you up, they look up your work, they're like, who's the new kid on the block who's like showing up in the commercial scene? Because it was sort of a big deal if you were running a production of that scale where you were booking one of their spaces, then you're starting to become like a big money client for them as well. And they obviously are hoping to build a relationship with you so that you book their spaces all the time. That was so bizarre, you know. And then the whole shoot was, it was great, you know, like the client was really nice. I had a lot of fun. I really knew how to rely on my team, and I felt like no matter what gets thrown at us, I have people there with me that can help me figure it out in the moment. And the client was happy, and not even like 24 hours after that, I got a call from a producer for my first ever global campaign that I ended up shooting, and they were sort of related to one another. Like he knew that I had shot at Milk Studios the day previously, and he was in Minneapolis. Like I feel like they definitely like keep an eye on you, like they become aware of you, and sort of Yeah, word travels very fast in this industry. And like oftentimes I don't really know how that happens, but it was somehow related, because that global campaign was supposed to be shot in New York City originally. And he was like, we know you shoot at Milk Studios a lot, but are there any other studios in the city that you like? Mind you guys, this was not even 24 hours before then, had I shot my first ever campaign at that studio chain. So obviously I just played along with it. I was like, oh yeah, I really like the Milk Studio spaces, and on the inside being like freaking out, like what? So yeah, that is the story of my first ever big commercial campaign that I shot. And then it sort of like opened the gates to me doing more campaigns like that. And it's not always that you like shoot one campaign and then it's like the floodgates open and then all of a sudden you're like, you can't save yourself from like everybody wanting to work with you. I mean, maybe that's the case for some people and that's amazing. For me, it was sort of like, well, then I did the global campaign, which was just like saved me in the year of COVID, of like not even qualifying for unemployment, and just like getting to do those two jobs in that year was sort of what saved me from having to leave this country. If you guys didn't know, I'm from Germany. I'm not a US citizen, so I'm here on a freelance work visa. So, that was, thank God, knock on wood. Like I got so lucky that year. And building relationships to brands like that obviously has shaped my career. But you'll experience successes like that, and then you'll take 3 steps back, and then all of a sudden dead silent nothing, and until the next big thing comes along. And the progression, sometimes you can't really predict where it's going to go from there, but it was definitely the most exciting moment up until that point in my career that I ever experienced. I see a question. Did you already know where your infrastructure was leaking to get it fixed and get on more jobs like this, or did you see the leaks from these experiences? Well, I guess it depends on what you mean as in leaks. There was definitely no leaks in terms of like that I messed up in the sense of like getting the contract negotiations right, or like backing myself up legally, or insurance wise. Like, where was your infrastructure failing? You mean in terms of like getting more campaigns, or in terms of like doing the job? Oh, getting more campaigns. I think outreach was definitely one of the things. Whereas like I had to just sort of become visible to these brands like through the grapevine, like word to mouth. I don't really know, maybe through being on set a lot as an assistant or something, and obviously knowing the right people, like the retoucher that recommended me for that job. And then I know that the global campaign I got because one of the girls on the marketing company that got hired for the rebrand of that global brand was a big fan of the modeling agency that I was very closely interlinked with. And I think that's sort of how she noticed me, because she was such a big fan of the diversity from the modeling agency and was following all of their work. And I was shooting everybody's test shoots and like doing shoots upon like one shoot after the other with so many of their signed talent that like my name kept popping up. In terms of like why there is lulls every once in a while between shooting campaigns, there's so many reasons for it. I mean, first of all, our industry has seasons. Like big brands, they have like an annual budget, and then they have seasons in which they focus on producing new content, or like have product releases. In this case, it was also during the pandemic. So up until that point in the industry, there was always like, okay, you're going to be busy right before Christmas, because that's when all of the summer campaigns get shot. And that's when like the last chunk of budget of the year is being used up, because if you don't use it up, you're going to get a smaller budget the next year. And then like at the height of the summer is the second season where you be shooting a lot or something like that, because the product releases are timed out like that. But then as soon as the pandemic hit, all of that sort of got scrambled. A lot of the smaller name brands, unfortunately, like either completely went bankrupt or just didn't have any money for productions, or had to scale back so much that they were doing in-house productions, or just doing like paid influencer campaigns or something like that. So the big commercial industry definitely took a hit in that case, especially like up and coming young photographers, because those are like our gateway into bigger name brand campaigns, is the smaller sort of startup brands. And a lot of those just sort of like literally guys have not recovered up until this day, which is so unfortunate, you know. And then the like bigger campaign product releases, even those got completely jumbled up. Like typically I've shot campaigns and you can count on those campaigns coming out, like being published within like 6 months, maybe 8 months. I shot a campaign in the pandemic that came out a year and a half later, because that's how much their product got delayed. Like it's all so precisely timed out from like when you shoot the campaign versus like when the product is going into production, when the marketing for the product that's about to be released starts launching, and like all of those steps. It's really fascinating actually. So in terms of my infrastructure, I think having consistent outreach and making yourself like presenting yourself to more and more brands and sort of showing up as an individual that wants to work with a brand and reminding them that you exist and showing them again and again why you think you're a good fit for them is something that I learned a little bit later on how to do and how important that is, you know, because it's very easy to land a campaign or two like I did and then think that, oh, that's all I need in order for more work to come in. And maybe that is the case for some people, but not always, you know, just because like I shot a campaign that was shown in stores all over the world, like in India shopping malls, my images would be shown. And you do a campaign like that and you think, well, I made it. But there's like hundreds of thousands of brands that don't know you exist. And just because you shot one for one of those global brands doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're in high demand. But it definitely means that you're qualified to do more of the same. Like you've already done it once, and that obviously is very helpful to like show brands like, hey, I know how to run a production of this scale, and like I know how to step up to the plate or whatever the term is, you know, and like deliver. Because if somebody's going to be handing you a budget of $50,000, they'll want to make sure that you know how to use it. So it says so cool. Just the thought of it makes me shiver in a good way. It is pretty magical when you think about it. Like I remember as an intern, there was a photographer that rented the space that the photographer that I was interning for owned. And he was shooting some very popular American apparel brand, something like Abercrombie and Fitch or something like that. And I remember all of the girls in the back office like talking about him and looking him up because he was 25 and he was like the lead photographer on this campaign. And I remember looking at him thinking like, and I was like 21 at the time. And I was like, damn, this guy is 25 and he's like, he has a room of like 20 people for this production and he is the photographer and like people are listening to him. And I thought like, how do I create this life for myself? How do I get to where he is? Like, how do I do what this guy is doing so early on in his career already? And then the first campaign that I shot, I was 24. And all of a sudden I was that person on a set with all of these people around me. It was just absolutely mind-boggling, you know, and I'll never forget that feeling. And it was petrifying and scary. And my pulse was probably at 180 for like 2 weeks straight. But at the same time, I felt like this is what I've been gunning for my entire life, guys. I picked up a camera when I was 7 years old. And this was definitely one of those like milestone moments for me. And at the same time, like those moments feel like the peak highs of your career. They also come along with like an emotional sort of come down afterwards. And then you go back to just sitting in front of your computer and sending cold outreach emails or planning your next Instagram post or you know, going back to retouching your images yourself and holding your own lights. Like it's very humbling. But those are some of the moments that I know a lot of us are gunning for, you know. Ultimately, this is what we are dying to do, and I want you guys to experience that too. Thanks for the reminder to constantly knock on doors and make ourselves visible to brands. Yes, it's literally one of the most important, what I call money making activities, because that's one of the things that people neglect as soon as they experience this sort of successes that they were after in the first place, because then they feel like, oh, well, now this is obviously occupying more of my attention, and like I need to focus on this thing that I wanted to happen for myself for such a long time. And then they forget that like there can be quite a lull afterwards if you don't sort of upkeep what you were doing up until that point, because that is what got you to that point in the first place. So the focus needs to be on continuously doing that no matter what. Like, for example, if you guys have an outreach routine, and I teach, you know, a strategy of outreach that sort of gets you in front of the clients that you want to be noticed by, it is the consistency that ultimately leads to results. And it is those mundane sort of activities that you need to be building your business around, no matter how many campaigns you end up shooting within that month. Like, you better be sitting there, and if you have 5 minutes, be doing that, like hitting your numbers every week. And yes, I fall off of that every once in a while too. Like, I'm still training myself how to do that. But if there's one thing that I've noticed from doing campaigns like that, it's that those small activities that you build into your day-to-day routines of running your business, because we're oftentimes a one-person show, you know, like if we're not doing it, nobody's doing it. And then you'll, like, your success streak will dry out. And it's quite painful to experience that, you know. It feels like you're failing, it feels like a setback. But, you know, every beginning is the hardest. And when you start out doing campaigns like this, like, it's such a roller coaster, right? And even experiencing that, like, you'll be fine, and you'll be able to move past it and learn from it. And there will be mistakes along the way that feel huge, you know, in comparison to if you do something when you're still an assistant and it sets you back. It feels different than when you're shooting a global campaign, and then you know, maybe the next one doesn't come when you were expecting it to come, or maybe the one that you have shot for a couple of times starts hiring a different photographer, or you're in the running for the biggest campaign of your career up until that point and they give it to another photographer. All of these experiences you will make, and you will learn how to deal with it, and you will learn how to view it as there's more where that came from. And rejections can be just as much part of your progression to having the career that you want. And it can't just all be golden moments. I think we all know that, you know, but at the same time, like, they are allowed to be monumental moments like the one that I was just talking about. And you guys deserve to experience those things, because I know that you guys can rise to the occasion with the right sort of support for that. So I'm glad that I'm getting to share these stories with you guys. And if you want that kind of support, like, hit me up for one-on-one coaching. I'd love to be part of your success story and part of your progression of your career, because it is absolutely exhausting and really, really tough to do it all on your own. Like, I know that firsthand. And for a long time in my career, I wished I had sort of a community to have this sort of exchange, or somebody sitting me down and being like, here's what it looked like when I was doing it. Here are some of the things that I wish I would have done differently. And here are some of the things I wish somebody would have told me, or I would have known, like, preparing for this next step in my career. So I'm glad I'm getting to do that for you guys a little bit. And I'm glad you guys are here to take it. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for all of your feedback. Thank you for everybody in here live. I hope you guys enjoyed my little story time and that was entertaining for you guys, and maybe gave you a little bit of those butterflies that you guys were saying, like, this could be you. Like, I know this can be you. So let's get it. Thanks for sharing the story. Such a cool one, full of coincidences, struggles, and magic all at once. This will be us thanks to you. Yes, it will. Okay, well, thank you so much for that feedback. Thank you for tuning in, and check out my Eventbrite for the next Rich Artist Friday. Guys, we're coming up on 40 weeks of doing Rich Artist Fridays. Like that's absolutely insane to me. And if you ever miss a Rich Artist Friday, or you're like, you see me advertise a topic where you're like, oh my God, I really want to hear it, but I can't be there live, I upload them on my YouTube channel. And obviously like the Instagram live will be up as well. So you guys can always find the recordings of the Rich Artist Fridays. And yeah, if you want one-on-one coaching, hit me up, slide into my DMs, or take a look at my website where I sort of lay out some of the group workshops that we've done up until this point. I'm really trying to give you guys as much input from all angles possible and make it accessible for you guys. Soul says, Rich Artist Fridays made my year. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's true. I mean, this year, how many weeks are there in a year? Have I been doing Rich Artist Fridays longer than a year? If I did it for 52. Okay. Yeah, that, oh my God, we should do like an anniversary Rich Artist Friday when we're coming up on 52, like Rich Artist Friday number 52. You guys remind me to do that. That would be so cool. Maybe we'll make it like an hour-long one, and we'll make it like a really, really good and juicy one. All right, guys, I love you guys so much. I'll see you next week. Mwah.